We'll proceed with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I assume there are no public comments since I don't see any public, so.
I had something I wanted to talk about briefly that's not on the agenda, so I could do it as a public member of the public.
I suppose.
The high-speed rail people had a public meeting in Burlington, and they talked about that they will be building this track down the peninsula, and they think it's viable to send 20 high-speed trains down the peninsula every hour. And considering that it takes some time for them to pass, that doesn't leave a whole lot of time for cars to cross railroad tracks. And we in Atherton have several above ground, crossings, Watkins and Fair Oaks. So I think as the transportation committee, we should consider bringing some thought to bear on what we're going to do, because making an underpass or an overpass, first off, is expensive, and secondly, it's going to take a lot of time. And I'd rather not wait until we're all sitting there with the town divided to think about it.
That is kind of, there is a rail committee that's considering some of those things, isn't there?
I know there's a rail committee. I'm not sure, how much they're involved in those discussions right now. I'm not sure.
And at this point, although there's been a lot of discussions about high-speed rail potential impacts, all the studies that have been done, really because that's still really not a lot has been done. The primary focus of the rail committee is on the Caltrain electrification project, which is kind of the precursor for high-speed rail.
I know that Palo Alto is looking at options. They have numerous crossings.
Yes.
Looking at what their options are.
So maybe we should bring that up with George Rodericks and see if that's within our purview to discuss it. I think it's a good point. Somebody needs to be thinking about it, and Atherton needs to take a position, I think, on what they want to see happen. I know that a lot of people I know are very much opposed to what they've done in San Carlos with that big berm where the railroad track's on top, and but I think they could do more like what's been done in Redwood City, where I guess it's Fifth Avenue, is it Fifth? Where it goes under the railroad track, so that
Yes.
they've got underneath, yeah.
Well, this committee has been in existence for 20, 30, 40 years. This is a permanent committee. The rail committee was something that just came in existence 8, 9, 10 years ago. And I never could understand why we had two, basically transportation. If they had one large committee, say we put 8 or 9 more people here, and just call it the transportation, which would handle that. Like we just brought it up. Well, what do they think? What do they, it's a committee that is not permanent, it's just an ad hoc or whatever committee. It's renewed every once in a while. But this committee used to meet every month, and they changed it to every 2 months, which I'm happy for that. But you have basically two committees dealing with the same issue.
Well, maybe we can ask George if this is an appropriate agenda item for our future meeting of this committee. But it sounds like ultimately it's something you'd want to have public hearings on, and
If I could just three things, background field. One, I had been, but no longer am, prohibited from voting or participating in discussions on tanks affecting the 500 feet of the track. And we actually wrote to the Fair Political Practice Commission and got a waiver because so much of the town is affected by the track. So as of, I don't know, 3 weeks ago or something, I'm able to fully engage on the issue. So just by way of background. And then one thing I know is that ultimately there will be EIRs, which have wide, ramifications, some of which will affect clearly traffic. I assume has to be one thing you look at, but it also would affect other communities in town. I mean, the track runs right by the park. I can think of a quick example, and I'm sure they might want to have some input. So there's got to be some mechanism for everybody to get their input in. And I think we should first talk about George, and then the council should try to figure out some type of approach. You're right; it's a very important issue.
So, Ed, can you take that as?
I will have that discussion with George, and then when we have our pre-agenda meeting for January, we can see where we're at on that, and if we agree, we can
Okay.
put it on the agenda for some discussion. I think the biggest concern will be, and I think Mike will probably agree, is that I guess we don't want to be doing something that interferes with what the rail committee is doing.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want to be working against another committee or undercutting them, so
Well, I
have to have a
actually think
discussion about that.
there was another committee or something that looked directly at high-speed rail, and whether it was a kind of a committee with other jurisdictions.
Well, we certainly could reach out and have somebody come and do a presentation of where we're at on that in the town and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I know that we have a couple people that speak at our council meetings, occasionally on high-speed rail, one of our neighbors.
All right. Thank you for bringing that up, Mary. Any other public comments?
There's no public comment.
The next item is approval of the minutes of the last September meeting. Were there any revisions or comments about that? If not, I'd accept a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. No presentations. Sorry?
I'm just, is there another agenda and minutes? Everyone seems to have 3 packets of information that you got to table.
Oh, I brought this myself.
Oh, okay.
But I'm happy to share.
It's worth it.
Do you need an agenda? Is that
I'll
what
look over.
okay.
No presentations, so we move on to the regular agenda, old business, which is mostly, or maybe all completely, reports from Mike Kashiwagi, starting with the bicycle pedestrian master plan. And before you get started on that item, I understand that I didn't go to the last council meeting, and as a result, I was appointed as the representative of this committee on the Bike and Pedestrian Master Plan Committee.
It was represented that someone talked to you about it. I gotta say, I went through this last week.
And which is fine. I think it's a good idea. In fact, Mary one time had mentioned she thought that was important, that somebody from this committee. But I'm also supposed to have an alternate, and from this committee, and so I would entertain a volunteer to be my alternate on this committee, and particularly because the next meeting I think is on the 17th of November.
It's actually on the 24th of November.
Oh, it's the 24th of November, and I'm going to be out of town, so my alternate will need to attend that meeting. And then isn't there a public outreach meeting or something too, Mike?
Well, that's something different. That's associated with the Bike Ped Master Plan, and that's next Tuesday.
Next
There's
Tuesday?
a public meeting on the Bike Ped Master Plan.
Okay, and I think I can attend that. But, Mary, would you be?
Well, I'm not sure if it's appropriate because my husband is on that
Oh,
committee.
he is.
Yeah.
sure of being a liaison from this committee to that committee, would that matter?
No, I don't think so.
Hmm?
I don't think so.
I said,
Okay.
it's okay.
Well, I know you expressed an interest in it, so I think that would be a good solution. Plus, you both know where the other one is, so. Thank you. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, so the first item under old business is the bicycle pedestrian master plan, and there's several things to report on that. The first thing is that I think as we reported at the last meeting, the first phase of this was going to be the implementation of the Class 3 bike lanes, and basically what that is putting signs and what's called sharrows, which is basically paint on the pavement of the bicycles. So we opened bids for that project on October 29th. I believe we received 4 bids. The low bid was for $81,380, which was a good bid. It was slightly below our engineer's estimate. So we will be going to the November 18th City Council meeting with a recommendation to award that bid. The second thing associated with the Bike Pedestrian Master Plan is the community meeting that Chairman Sweeney mentioned just a while ago. And that is coming up on next, I believe, Tuesday, November 18th. No, I'm sorry. It's going to be November 17th, which is next Tuesday. It's going to be at the Pavilion at Holbrook Palmer Park from 6 o'clock to 7:30. And the purpose of that meeting is part of the work that's been done. Our consultant has been taking a look at the feasibility of implementing the Class 1 and Class 2 bike facilities. Because for Class 2, that's where the bicyclists actually have a lane that's painted on the street for them, which in many cases around town will require a widening of the street in order to accommodate that. So that's why we had them do a feasibility to identify, what places, would need to be widened, what impacts that widening might have on private property. So that work has been completed, and so that's the primary purpose of next Tuesday's public meeting, is to share the results of that, and so people know that, if the town does implement the Class 1s and Class 2s, what that means. That meeting is happening next week. The next item on old business is the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program.
Sorry, Mike, please.
Oh.
On that, just a quick question. You said we might be accepting a bid for the Class 3 striping and the painting.
Yes.
When would that actually be done?
Well, typically after the council awards, then you sign contract, get bonds and all that stuff. It's typically about a month. And then at that point, it'll be weather dependent. So probably...
It's pretty quick, though.
Oh, no, it's very quick. And the actual, to get the work done, it'll be pretty quick. Because, again, it's just placement of signs and, painting of these sharrows on the streets.
So early January would be not unrealistic?
Well,
Or
again,
January?
weather dependent, but, we
Right.
anticipate that probably, hopefully it'll be done by the, end of January timeframe. Yeah. Any other questions on the Bike Ped Master Plan? Okay. So the next item is the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program, and again, what that is that's, putting together a policy document that's going to define, policy around the placement of traffic calming measures throughout town. The town hired a consultant to do that. A draft document was prepared. It was reviewed by both Public Works staff, Atherton Police, and Menlo Fire. We received comments from Police and Fire, and we actually met to review comments. The comments for Police and Fire have now been implemented into the draft document, and we plan on having a community meeting on that project, and that meeting has been scheduled, and it will be it's going to be on December 8th, Tuesday, December 8th, and that also is going to be at the pavilions in Holbrook Palmer Park from 6 to 7:30. And the purpose of that meeting is to share with the community kind of the purpose of the neighborhood traffic management program, the types of devices that will be considered as part of it, and the process for actually getting it implemented. So that's going to be shared with the public. We're going to get their comments, make any appropriate adjustments to the document after that meeting, and then we will agenda that document at the January meeting of this committee to review that document with this committee, get any of your feedback, and then once we do that, we plan on going to City Council in February of 2016, for them to review and adopt that as policy.
So for the public meeting, will they do the same, send postcards out to all the town?
Yes, we've kind of created these postcards that same thing. We'll send it out to all the residents. We also posted it. We'll post it on the town's website. Any questions on that? Okay. The next item is really, I think, maybe an open discussion for the committee. So maybe I'll go to item D, the status of the pedestrian hybrid beacon. And this is the town project to install a pedestrian hybrid beacon at Almond Draw and El Camino Real. Plans were completed and sent out to bid, and actually we had the bid opening this morning. We received 4 bids for that project, and the low bid for that project is $148,400, and which is also a good bid. It's slightly below the engineer's estimate. We are now, and actually we prepared a staff report. We reviewed all the bids. The bids, there wasn't any issues with the bids. So we are also going to be placing that on the November 18th City Council meeting to award that contract for the pedestrian hybrid beacon.
We're cost sharing with the fire district on that?
Yes, and for that project, there's a Menlo Fire agreed to a 50-50 cost sharing. So originally this project was budgeted at $350,000 for total project costs. Now that we received bids, we are now estimating the total project cost to be around $300,000. And with the 50-50 cost sharing, the cost to the town will be approximately $150,000. Okay. Any questions on that? And then so as far as the construction for that, the one thing that's a little bit different with traffic signals is that the poles and the mast arms, every single one has to be individually designed. And so in order to speed up the actual construction, what we did is we actually procured the poles ourselves, the town did. So because that's normally about a 5-month process to have it designed, have the design approved, have it manufactured, and then have it delivered. So that's a 5-month process. So rather than making that a contractor responsibility, basically that 5-month time clock starting probably in January, the town actually procured it, so that clock has started. We expect to receive the poles probably in early March, and so even though the council will could potentially award the bids next week, construction won't start until the poles actually arrive. So, we anticipate construction starting in about the March 2016 timeframe. Probably will take about a month and a half to construct. So hopefully by the end of April of 2016, we'll have an operating pedestrian hybrid beacon at Alejandra or Almond Draw. And then, as you know, in addition to that, Caltrans has a separate project where they're going to be constructing 17 or 18 of these pedestrian hybrid beacons on El Camino Real throughout San Mateo County, of which 2 of those locations are here in Atherton, those locations being at Alejandra and Isabella. And so, Caltrans, that project is under design. They're still, anticipating the design to be complete in the summer of 2016, and then they'll have a bidding process. So, the start of that construction will probably be in early 2017. But one of the things that we requested, and we believe Caltrans is going to be doing, is that in their bid, although there'll be 17 of these things constructed, they're going to specify that the two in Atherton is constructed first. Okay, so that we can get our the two beacons here in Atherton's as early as possible. So, potentially the two pedestrian hybrid beacons at Isabella and Alejandra will be operational in the summer of 2017, which is probably about a year and a couple months after the town's project will be completed.
Why does it take a month and a half? I'm just curious. What do they to construct? What do they do?
Well, they got to install the poles. They have to coordinate with PG&E to get power.
Yeah.
So there's some underground utilities, and it just takes that long. Yes.
Why did they pick Isabella?
Um,
Because, well, I was going to say, the Selby Lane school children go down Selby Lane. They also come down Stockbridge, a lot of them. And some may even wander over to Almondrall. But Stockbridge, Almondrall, and Selby would be more, there's more activity of pedestrians on those streets. Isabella, you can sit there all day and you won't see a pedestrian. Almondrall, we know why, the one where the pedestrian was killed, they know why it's there. But I wonder why Isabella?
well, actually, it was at the request of the town. I mean, there's 5 existing crosswalks at uncontrolled intersections at Selby, Stockbridge, Almondrall, Isabella, and Alejandra. And so we actually asked Caltrans, when they agreed to do 2, to do it at Isabella and Alejandra because of accidents, pedestrian accidents that occurred at those 2 locations. And then that left 3, and we're actually looking at a variety of different things to do at Selby, because we know that any kind of signal at Selby could, there's going to have differences of opinion of what people like or don't like. So we're actually studying several different alternatives there. So then that left Stockbridge and Almondrall. And when this was presented to the city council actually asked, directed staff to do it at Almondrall versus Stockbridge. And, the rationale, I believe, is because of the fire station being on Almondrall, and this pedestrian hybrid beacon would have a benefit to, the fire trucks who, are exiting Almondrall onto El Camino Real. And that's the reason why Menlo Fire District has agreed to pay for half of it.
Which is also part of the rationale. So we would believe that they contribute some, therefore be more efficient.
So, but it was, over the last couple of years, we have, done some, extensive studies, have gone, to council with multiple reports to kind of get where we are today.
So, Mark, one more thing. I never really thought about it until you did this presentation, but these are all bespoke or custom-made poles. Are they all going to look alike when they're done? The ones the county's working on are look the same as the ones that we
Yes.
put in that? Okay.
Yes. And in fact, that's one of the things, because one of the things we needed to get an encroachment permit from Caltrans before we can do any of this. So our design went through, review. So yeah, we wanted to make sure that it all looks the same and conforms. The next item on the list is traffic counts, and in front of you, we have a map and a listing of all the locations where traffic counts were taken, and by doing this now, for the first time, the town has a baseline count of traffic volumes, throughout the city. I think, as I reported previously, that originally we did some traffic counts in the spring of 2015. In fact, we did 28, we counted at 28 locations. And after getting that information and putting it on a map, we kind of thought, we think we're missing some key locations. And so we, after school started again, we went out and we did an traffic volume counts an additional 9 locations. So that's the results of what you have on your map. And so, now we have traffic volume counts at 37 locations throughout town that, in future years, by doing it again, we can actually get what the traffic growth is.
Mike, what are these counts? These are literally midnight to midnight and in both
Yes.
directions on the street?
Yes. So these counts are total, so it doesn't tell you in what direction, but these are just total. Okay.
I'm sorry, and the time period they were taken over was 24 hours? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's just one 24-hour period in each case? Or?
Correct. But in doing that, we do our best to try to make sure that it's representative. So in other words, we don't do it on a weekend. We don't do it during time when there's major construction going on or events that could impact the normal flow of traffic. And that's why also when we realized it would be good to get some additional counts, we waited until after school started again, because again, with schools in session, that affects traffic volumes quite a bit. So again, this is one day in time, but hopefully it's representative.
And the fact that, like on El Camino, it's just that one section that has 38,480. That's only because that's the only section you measured, right?
Right, but if you take a look at this, like for instance.
You go on 5-6 blocks earlier, it's got 36,000.
Yeah, but there's rationale for doing that. And so if you notice that on El Camino Real, we took one count on one side of Watkins, and another, Watkins and Fair Oaks, and another count on the other side, right? So that's, and the same thing on, if you take a look at Alameda, which is another, high volume roadway, we did it at points where there could be major feeders to those roadways. So that's, so we can, that's typically the logic on why we choose some of these locations. But it is at that point, but, we don't expect traffic to vary much, say between Watkins and Fair Oaks on El Camino, because there's, really not a lot of places for huge amounts of traffic to be added.
And Alameda, in that one place there are 2 numbers, 16,329 and 15,617.
Correct.
What are the 2 numbers?
Because one is on one side of Stockbridge and one is on the other side of Stockbridge.
Oh, I see.
So is there a way to read that more cars turn right off of Stockbridge on Alameda than turn left?
That's one possible conclusion, but
Or I guess conversely on Alameda, they turn left onto Stockbridge or go straight. Right?
correct.
Oh.
Okay. Let's see. The next
And
thing. Oh, sorry.
What's the takeaway from?
Well, there really isn't any takeaway, and the reason why we did this was there's been a lot of discussion and questions about all the projects happening throughout, around the town of Atherton and the traffic impacts to the town of Atherton. And so it's one thing to say that as a result of Google's new campus, wow, traffic really increased. Well, okay, but it's another thing to say
Baseline.
in 2015, traffic on Alameda was this, or maybe our better example would be Middlefield was this, and in 2018, it grew by 20%.
So this is like a baseline now.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
and do you think you'll repeat it every year or every 3 years? Or?
Probably not every year, because I don't know that, but maybe every 3 or 4 years. Yeah, it would be good for the town
Yeah,
to
that's
do it
good.
again. But again, it's mostly, you know, to provide real information as opposed to anecdotal ones with all the major developments going on around the town.
Really nice to have it. And the other Marsh, it would be nice to see what Marsh was
Yeah.
5 years ago.
Well, you know, it's saturated at particular times of day.
Yeah, and really when you think about it, I mean, I was really actually shocked when 22,000 cars, that's a lot of cars on a two-lane roadway.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, so yeah, there's a lot of traffic on Marsh.
It actually handles it fairly well.
It does.
Yeah.
No, it does, and you know, that's a great example of where what impacts traffic congestion are intersections. And if you notice that whenever the very first thing, if you want to improve congestion, is you need to widen the intersections, because that's where your problems are. I mean, if you think about it, that's why freeways can carry so much traffic, because there's very little intersections, because those are the interchanges, right? And so, but yeah, so that it really shows, and you're right, that a two-lane roadway can handle a lot of traffic when there isn't a lot of conflict points, you know, in that section.
And it's really in the morning and evening rush.
That's right.
That even those times, I go through it a lot, and it doesn't take long to get through, even
Right.
at the rush hour.
Yeah, I mean, even in the peak, you know, like in the mornings when it's bad, you know, I mean, if it's really bad, it could take you 3 cycles to get, you know, through the signal at Marsh and Middlefield, which isn't too bad.
Good. Thank you.
And then item F is city council appointed, and really there that Chairman Sweeney already mentioned that I think as a result of comments from this committee, the city council did add a member from this committee to the Bike Ped Advisory Committee.
Okay, and we now have, so I guess I'm the member, and there's the alternate. Okay, under new business, you're up again, Mike.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you know, what that is that as part of our Bike Ped master plan work, we've asked our consultant to do several additional things. One of the additional things was taking a look at, because right now the current Bike Ped master plan designates Glenwood as a class 2 and doesn't have any designation for Oak Grove, which is a signalized intersection, right? So one of the things we've asked them to take a look at is from a connectivity standpoint, you know, should maybe Oak Grove be a class 2 designation and maybe Glenwood be a class 3? So that's one of the things that they're evaluating, and we had hoped to get the report prior to this meeting, but they weren't able to complete that. The other thing that we're looking at, and I think again as a result of, I think several meetings ago, a public member came and talked about the intersection of Watkins and Middlefield, and the pedestrian crossing. So as a result of that, we also asked our consultant to take a look at that entire segment, instead of just taking a look at that one location, taking a look at that entire segment, basically from Watkins to Oak Grove, to see if you know, we should add another pedestrian crossing, and if so, where? And in addition to just the crosswalk, if there should be other amenities to, you know, make sure that we're not creating another perceived safety issue of a crosswalk at an uncontrolled intersection. So, you know, again, I had hoped to get the results of that study with recommendation on both those items so that we can report it to the committee tonight. But you know, I know for sure that we'll have it for your January meeting.
Okay. Good. Any questions or comments? Okay. Speed limits?
And on that, that's really to, and what is also in front of you is the council report that we took to council in October basically reestablishing speed limits on a number of cities or a number of streets here in Atherton. And, you know, we have a couple of former public safety folks who they're well aware of, you know, the requirement of this. But, you know, the reason why this is done is that I think it's every 5 years. In order to use radar to enforce speed limits, you need to go through engineering speed survey, which is, you know, what we did on these streets. And then once we go through the process, identify what the 85th percentile speed is, and then based on that, set an appropriate speed limit, having the city council approve of that, then now, you know, Atherton can enforce using radar, and, you know, citations should not be contested at the court.
And I think this was brought forward, you know, just at my suggestion more to come to the council, and I just thought the committee should be aware of what's
Yes.
going on.
And we didn't change any speed limits.
No, in this case, all the speed limits remain the same.
I notice, I don't see Glenwood on here. Is that, you don't do all the roads all the time?
No, it's you know, we get a list from the police department because they know, you know, when each one of the speed surveys are expiring. So so these are the only ones that were going to expire, and I think they were expiring in November of
Do
this
you
year.
use speed surveys for all roads within Atherton?
No, only certain roads. Currently, all of our streets are up to date with the radar survey information, and our next batch of surveys aren't due until 2017. So we'll be good for a couple of years now.
Yeah, the police department here is very good. They keep track of all that. So well in advance of it expiring, they let us know, so that we have, you know, plenty of time to go out and redo the speed surveys and then bring it to council.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Okay, I guess we can move on to the staff reports on September and October.
So we'll do the September report first. There was one traffic complaint received by the police department. Is for red light violations at the intersection of Middlefield and Encinal during the school pickup and drop-off times, especially by bicycles. I don't know exactly how much time was spent in there, but one citation was issued. No arrests were made for driving under the influence during September. 2 truck stop details were performed, which resulted in 3 deliveries in town, 6 warning citations, and 1 citation, and we spent 67 minutes at the truck stop. Our traffic officers, Metzger, Boyle, and Carpenter, were on their motorcycles during the month. We had 10 traffic collisions, 3 involved injuries, 1 was a hit and run, and none were caused by a driver who was driving under the influence, and all those locations and information is listed there. And we had 375 total traffic stops during the month of September.
Can I ask, in the truck stops, about how many trucks did you stop?
You know, it depends. Sometimes we'll stop, 5, sometimes we'll stop 20. Just depends how many trucks are coming through, and where we go is right there on southbound Middlefield, just north of Watkins in the cutout area there. And a lot of the trucks that we stop are making the left-hand turn from Marsh onto Middlefield, trying to get off of 101. And a lot of them are making deliveries in town, but we find a lot of trucks going to businesses in Menlo Park or going up to Stanford or somewhere in Palo Alto.
And
Do you do a mechanical inspection
We don't do a mechanical inspection.
or a weigh?
No. We don't have anybody here who's been trained in any of that.
but you basically stop trucks that are
Over
overweight.
3 tons.
Yeah.
Yeah, over 3 tons is what we're stopping for.
And there are signs saying no trucks over, no
There
truck
are.
trucks.
There's signs on most of the streets leading into town. There's also a sign on Marsh Road, and then there's the truck stop sign there posted at the truck stop.
There's one on the freeway too, of no
There
trucks,
There might be.
yeah. Okay, good.
What's the fine typically for that?
I don't know exactly what the fine is. It's a municipal code time somebody receives a ticket, the fine is lower, but on the citation, if they've been cited for it before, we'll put how many times they've been cited before. And then my understanding is if they've got multiples, then the fine amount goes up.
We've also reached out to Safeway and other, entities that have truck drivers and talked to their management, and I think that's been helpful too.
Yeah.
So there's more than one way, other than enforcement, to deal with some of these issues.
So their alternative is Woodside Road or,
Right, so
Riverwalk?
they can be on any state highway or freeway, so they can use 101, they can use Woodside Road, they can use El Camino, they can use 280. And what we do is we tell them, if you're making a delivery, the shortest way in, the shortest way out. But when we stop these guys, we don't only issue them a warning or a citation, we also tell them which routes to use in the future. So we're not just out there writing them something, we're also giving them advice or instructions on how to get to their destination without coming through Atherton if they don't have a delivery or pickup here.
Can they use Willow?
Willow is a state highway, so they should be able to. Actually, Willow Road is not, only the portion from Bayfront to 101. The rest of Willow Road would be Menlo Park, so if they've got a delivery or pickup in Menlo Park, they should be able to use it. But they shouldn't be using Willow Road if they're coming to Atherton.
Okay. Thank you.
For October, we had one traffic complaint for October. It was the right-hand turns from Holbrook Lane to Middlefield Road in violation of the time restrictions. We spent 87 minutes out there and only issued one citation. One arrest was made for driving under the influence, and it was not the result of a traffic collision. No truck stop details were performed in October. Traffic officers Metzger, Boyle, and Carpenter were on their motorcycles during the month. We had 13 collisions this month. None involved injuries, 5 were hit and runs, and none were caused by anybody driving under the influence. And again, all that information is listed there for you. And we had 552 total traffic stops.
Okay. I was curious of the 555 Middlefield Road, which is twice unsafe backing. Is that somebody backing out of their driveway or?
So 555 Middlefield Road is Menlo Atherton High School.
Oh.
And it happened in the student parking lot.
I see.
There were a couple of them backing collisions, backed into their vehicle and fled the scene.
And so they call you to come do a report.
Correct.
Any questions or comments?
You did a great job again on the speeding citations. You had 270 for the 2 months, terrific, but do you get many protests? Court protests, do you guys get many?
We have been getting quite a few protests for traffic court, and I think the primary reason is just because the fines have gotten so outrageous. It's not only the fine for the ticket, but then it's also all the fees and
The insurance.
assessments and the insurance and everything else that goes along with that. So we have been receiving quite a few subpoenas.
Mostly the solo motorcycles mostly.
You know, I mean, we have gotten a couple motorcycles. One of our officers, Officer Gatto, on the weekends he'll go out in El Camino with a LiDAR gun, and he'll work speed enforcement with LiDAR. And on the weekends he's been getting some really fast speeds out on El Camino, both motorcycles and cars. A lot of it is mainly cars.
But you do get an interest in protests.
We have gotten
And I bet you win all the time too.
most of the time we do.
Right.
I think some of the people go to court just to see if the officer show up, as you know.
We know that. Yeah, that's
It
good.
really is expensive. I mean, it really is. You know, I talked to somebody the other day about a $490 ticket for basically a right turn, and didn't fight it. Well, say about fighting it for just that reason. You know, maybe the officer won't show up. Maybe something will happen, and it's enough money to matter.
Over the course of a typical year, do you DUI arrests fluctuate much month to month? I mean, are these fairly typical numbers, 0 1 month, 1
These have been fairly typical. I been some months where we've gotten 5 or 6 or 7, and there's months where we've gotten 0 or 1. So it does fluctuate over the year as we go on. Sometimes what we'll do is we'll do DUI enforcement. So part of Daly City PD has a OTS grant, and they do special DUI enforcement several times a year on all the major holidays, and then also sometimes just during the month they'll do DUI enforcements. So we'll try to send an officer to those when they come up, and that person's, his whole responsibility that entire shift is just to go out in Atherton and just look for people driving under the influence. It has, over the past several years, it has gotten tougher to find the DUIs, I think, with things like Uber and Lyft, and I think people may be starting to realize that there's other ways to get home rather than drive, and the implications that go with it if you get arrested for driving under the influence.
I'll just note, I read a study recently that Uber's had a significant effect on DUI activity in reducing it. Yeah.
Okay, any other business?
Just a quick comment, probably under Public Works. As you may know, the town owns 3 traffic signals. All of them are on Middlefield at the intersection of Marsh, Oak Grove, and Encinal. And the Public Works, working with the contractor we have that maintenance those, make sure that the batteries that run the flashing red lights when the power's out are new and working and up to date, because we had a power outage last week at Oak Grove and Middlefield, and the battery was not up to par, so we had traffic direction out there and signs and what have you, but we want to avoid that because the problem is we stick the signs out there, say stop, and then when the power's restored, the stop signs are out there, it's confusing for the motorists. So if the lights are flashing when the power's restored, that stops and the signals start functioning again.
We haven't had any flooding yet, have we, on Sirius?
Nothing serious, but we have had some minor
Yeah, I keep thinking
street
about
water.
that stretching on Middlefield in front of the high school. It's a low spot, and I don't think anything's been done about the drainage there, to my knowledge. Well, winter is coming, the ski slopes are opening. Okay, if there's nothing more, a motion to adjourn? All in favor? Aye. Thank you.